I'm Katari, 30, and literally last Christmas, my role as the family peacemaker, yeah, it totally backfired. The stability I'd worked my butt off to maintain, it blew up into a full-on family meltdown at our so-called happy reunion. My parents, always playing favorites, demanded I just accept their dismissal of me, and when I pushed back, the room went dead silent. "You're tearing us apart," my mom yelled, with everyone staring like I'd committed a crime. But here's the tea. Their shade didn't break me, it lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. A quick note, this story is copyrighted by the YouTube channel Brim Revenge. Reposting, revoicing, or editing this content without permission constitutes copyright infringement. Thank you for respecting original creative work. Now, back to the story. The snow crunched under my boots as I approached my childhood home, a 2-story colonial glowing with Christmas lights. My breath fogged in the December air and my stomach twisted. Not from the cold, but from the weight of returning. I'd spent years smoothing over family arguments, biting my tongue when my parents fawned over my younger sister Emily. But this time, something felt off. The front door swung open and Mom's smile was tight, her eyes darting past me. "Katari, you made it," she said, her voice clipped, like I was a guest who'd overstayed. Inside the living room was a shrine to Emily, her graduation photos, her awards, her engagement announcement framed in gold. My own achievements, a master's degree, a steady job, were nowhere to be seen. Then I saw it, the new family portrait above the fireplace. Mom, Dad, Emily, her fiancé, all beaming. I wasn't in it. My chest tightened like someone had punched the air out of me. I stood frozen, my fingers gripping my scarf. "Oh, that," Dad said, noticing my stare, his tone casual. "We took it last month. Emily thought it'd be nice." Nice? I'd been erased. My eyes stung, but I swallowed hard, refusing to let them see me crack. This wasn't just a photo, it was proof of what I'd always known. I was the outcast. But standing there, staring at my absence, something shifted. I wasn't going to beg for their love anymore. I was done playing their game. The sting of that portrait lingered as I stood in the living room, my coat still on, fingers tracing the edge of my scarf. The house smelled of cinnamon and pine, but it couldn't mask the chill of being overlooked. My mind drifted back to moments that had built this resentment. At 16, I'd won a state debate championship, clutching the trophy like it could prove my worth. Mom had nodded, said, "That's nice, Katari," then turned to Emily's piano recital, gushing over her natural talent. My trophy sat on my dresser gathering dust while Emily's ribbons lined the hallway. At 22, I graduated with honors, paying my own way through college. Dad sent a text, "Proud of you." Meanwhile, Emily's art school acceptance came with a catered party, Mom framing her sketches like they were Picasso's. I remember one Christmas I was 25 sitting at this same table. I'd just landed a promotion at work, managing a team of 10. I tried to share it, my voice steady but hopeful. "That's great, honey," Mom said, her eyes already on Emily, who'd just announced her Etsy shop. Dad handed Emily a check for supplies, while my news faded into the clink of wine glasses. I'd smiled, my jaw tight, and excused myself to the kitchen, gripping the counter to steady my shaking hands. Each memory was a pinprick, building to this moment. Emily's life was a spotlight, mine was a shadow. I wasn't jealous of her success, I wanted my own to matter. But every milestone I hit was met with shrugs, while her smallest wins were parades. Standing here now, staring at that portrait, those years of being invisible crystallized. My fingers curled into fists. I wasn't just the overlooked daughter anymore. I was the one who'd see through their facade. The portrait's glare followed me as I moved to the couch, my fingers fidgeting with the hem of my sweater. The realization hit me last spring, not with a shout but a whisper, when I found an old letter from Grandpa tucked in a book. He'd left me his rental property, a small apartment building, in his will. "For Katari, who'll know what to do with it," he'd written in his shaky scrawl. I'd assumed my parents were managing it for me, but something nagged. Their lavish trips, Emily's new car? Where was the money coming from? I started digging, my heart pounding late at night as I pored over bank statements and county records on my laptop, the screen's glow harsh against my tired eyes. The truth unraveled in a lawyer's email. My parents had forged documents, redirecting the property's income to themselves. They'd been siphoning it for years, funding their lifestyle and Emily's ambitions, her art studio, her engagement party. My stomach churned as I read the numbers, my hands trembling on the keyboard. Grandpa's trust meant for me was their secret piggy bank. I didn't confront them then. I was too raw, too afraid of their excuses. Instead, I worked quietly, hiring a lawyer, gathering evidence, my jaw clenched with every call. By December, I had proof. The property was legally mine, and I could reclaim it. The betrayal burned, but so did my resolve. Sitting here now, the Christmas lights mocking me with their cheer, I felt that spark from the portrait ignite into something fiercer. They thought they could erase me, but I was about to take back what was mine. The Christmas Eve air was thick with tension as I sat on the couch, my fingers twisting the edge of a throw pillow. Tomorrow's family dinner loomed like a storm cloud, and I couldn't shake the weight of what I'd uncovered about Grandpa's will. My lawyer had emailed that morning, confirming the paperwork was ready to reclaim my property. My heart thudded as I read her words, my thumb hovering over the screen. I wasn't just fighting for money, it was about righting a wrong, about claiming what Grandpa believed I deserved. But facing my family, knowing what they'd done, made my stomach knot. I'd spent years dreading these gatherings, pasting on smiles while their indifference chipped away at me. Now, I had to walk into that dining room, armed with the truth, and pretend everything was fine. I stood, pacing the guest room, my boots scuffing the hardwood. Outside, snow fell softly, but inside, my thoughts churned. Mom had called earlier, her voice bright but brittle, reminding me to dress nicely for dinner. Emily had texted, too, a selfie with her fiancé, all dimples and diamonds, captioned, "Can't wait for family time." I stared at it, my grip tightening on my phone. Family time. The words felt like a jab. I set the phone down, my hands shaking, and caught my reflection in the window, eyes tired but sharp. Tomorrow, I'd sit at that table, their laughter ringing hollow, knowing they'd stolen from me. I wasn't sure if I'd confront them yet, but the spark from that portrait was now a steady flame. I'd come to play their game one last time, but on my terms. The dining room glowed with candlelight, but the warmth was a lie as I took my seat, my hands smoothing the napkin across my lap. Mom bustled in with a platter of roasted turkey, her smile as forced as the festive garland draped over the table. Emily sat across from me, her engagement ring catching the light, her laughter loud as she recounted a story about her art gallery feature. Dad nodded along, his eyes crinkling with pride while I gripped my fork, the metal cool against my palm. "So, Katari," Mom said, her tone syrupy, "still doing that office job?" The pause was deliberate, her lips pursing as if my career was a quaint hobby. I forced a smile, my jaw tight. "Yeah, still managing my team," I said, but Emily cut in, gushing about her latest painting commission. Dad leaned forward, ignoring me. "That's our star," he said, patting Emily's hand. I felt my cheeks burn, my fingers curling under the table. Then came the backhanded jab. "Katari, you should try something creative like your sister," Mom said, her eyes flicking to me briefly before returning to Emily. The room seemed to shrink, their voices a dull roar. I took a sip of wine, the glass trembling slightly in my hand, and caught Emily's fiancé smirking like he was in on some private joke. Every word, every glance, was a reminder of my place, or lack of it. The portrait's absence loomed in my mind, a silent taunt. I sat there, swallowing the sting, but that flame inside me burned hotter. They thought they could diminish me, but I was already planning my next move. The clink of silverware paused as Mom stood, her smile wide but brittle, gesturing toward the living room. "We have something special to share," she said, her voice carrying that rehearsed cheer I'd come to dread. My stomach twisted as we followed her, my hands clenching at my sides. There, above the fireplace, the new family portrait was unveiled with a flourish, the frame gleaming under the Christmas lights. Mom, Dad, Emily, her fiancé, all smiling, their faces frozen in a perfect tableau. I wasn't there. My breath caught, my fingers digging into my palms. "Isn't it beautiful?" Emily gushed, her hand on her fiancé's arm while Dad nodded proudly. I stood rooted, my eyes locked on the empty space where I should have been. Mom turned to me, her expression shifting to something colder. "Katari, we thought it best to streamline things," she said, her words sharp, deliberate. "Emily's the heart of this family now." My heart pounded, my throat tightening as Dad added, "You've always been so independent, Katari, you don't need this." The room spun, their words a formal disowning, slicing through years of unspoken slights. Emily avoided my gaze, her fingers twisting her ring. I wanted to scream, to demand why, but my voice stayed locked. The portrait wasn't just a photo, it was their truth, their choice to erase me. My hands trembled, but that flame inside roared. They thought they'd broken me, but they just handed me the match to burn their pretense down. The silence after their words was suffocating, the portrait's smug faces staring down as I stood, my hands shaking at my sides. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket, sharp and insistent. I stepped back, ignoring Mom's raised eyebrow, and glanced at the screen, my lawyer's name. My pulse quickened as I answered, turning toward the corner of the room, my voice low. "Katari, it's done," she said, her tone crisp. "The property's income is redirected to you, and your parents' access is cut off. Legal proof of the fraud is ready." My breath hitched, my fingers tightening around the phone. The truth of their betrayal, years of siphoning Grandpa's legacy, landed like a hammer. I glanced at my family, their laughter resuming, oblivious to the bomb that had just dropped. Dad was pouring wine, Emily giggling with her fiancé, when I slipped the phone back into my pocket. My heart pounded, but my voice was steady as I said, "I need a moment." Mom's eyes narrowed, but I walked to the hallway, my boots clicking on the hardwood. Alone, I leaned against the wall, my hands clenching, unclenching. The lawyer's words replayed. They'd stolen from me, built their lives on my inheritance. The portrait, their words, this dinner, it all clicked. They didn't just favor Emily, they'd erased me to protect their lie. My chest burned, not with pain now but with power. I wasn't the outcast they'd painted. I straightened, my jaw set, the flame inside now ablaze. I'd return to that table, not as their scapegoat, but as the one holding the truth. I walked back to the dining room, my steps deliberate, the lawyer's call still pulsing in my veins. The table was alive with chatter, Emily's laugh grating as she leaned into her fiancé, Mom passing the gravy with a performative smile. I stood at the head of the table, my hands steady now, and cleared my throat. The room quieted, forks pausing midair. "I know about the inheritance," I said, my voice calm but cutting. Mom's smile froze, her fingers tightening on the serving spoon. Dad's glass stopped halfway to his lips, his eyes narrowing. "Grandpa's property was mine," I continued, my gaze locked on them. "You forged documents, used the income for yourselves, for Emily's life." Emily's face paled, her ringed hand dropping to her lap. "Katari, what are you?" she started, but I cut her off. "I have proof," I said, pulling out my phone, the lawyer's email open. "It's over, the property's mine now legally, your access is gone." The silence was deafening. Mom's mouth opening and closing like a fish. Dad sputtered, "This is outrageous," but his voice cracked, betraying his guilt. Emily's fiancé shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. I didn't yell, I didn't need to. The truth was enough. "You erased me from your portrait, your family," I said, my voice steady. "Now I'm done with your lies." I grabbed my coat, my boots echoing as I walked out, their stunned faces burned into my mind. The cold air hit me outside, but I felt lighter, the blaze inside me now a quiet, fierce glow. The night air was sharp as I drove away, my hands steady on the wheel, the glow of my family's betrayal fading in the rear view. I didn't go home. I headed to Sarah's apartment, my best friend since college, where warmth wasn't a facade. Her door swung open, and she pulled me into a hug, her curly hair tickling my cheek. "You look like you need wine," she said, her eyes searching mine. I nodded, sinking onto her couch, the cushions soft under me. Her boyfriend Mike was there too, setting out cheese and crackers, his quiet smile a contrast to the cold stares I'd left behind. I told them everything. The portrait, the fraud, my exit. Sarah's hand gripped mine, her thumb tracing circles on my knuckles, while Mike leaned forward, shaking his head. "They don't deserve you," he said, his voice low but firm. We stayed up late, the three of us laughing over old memories, road trips, late-night study sessions, each story a reminder of what family could be. Sarah poured more wine, her eyes fierce. "You're not alone, Katari," she said, her voice steady. I felt my shoulders relax, my fingers loosening around the glass. This was the difference. No judgment, no hierarchy, just people who saw me. The contrast to that suffocating dinner table was stark. My family had chosen Emily, built their world around her. But here, with Sarah and Mike, I was enough. The weight of the evening lifted, replaced by a quiet strength. I wasn't just leaving my family behind. I was choosing a new one, built on truth and care. The morning after the dinner, I sat at my kitchen table, sunlight streaming through the window, my coffee mug warm in my hands. My phone buzzed with texts from Mom, pleading, then accusing, but I let them sit unanswered, my thumb hovering over the screen. The lawyer's email was open on my laptop, confirming the rental property's income was now mine. I took a deep breath, my shoulders squared, and called the property manager. "Cut off my parents' access," I said, my voice steady, fingers tapping the table. "Redirect all payments to my account, effective immediately." He confirmed, no questions asked, and I felt a weight lift, my jaw unclenching for the first time in days. Later, I drafted an email to my family, my fingers deliberate on the keys. "The property is mine, as Grandpa intended," I wrote. "You no longer benefit from it." I didn't mention the fraud explicitly. They knew. I hit send, my heart pounding but not with fear, with clarity. Emily called minutes later, her voice shaky, begging to talk this out. I let it go to voicemail, my hand resting calmly on the table. This wasn't revenge, it was protection. I blocked their numbers, my fingers steady, and felt the silence settle like a shield. No more apologies, no more excuses. I opened my notebook, sketching plans for the property, repairs, better tenant support. This was my boundary, my new beginning. The flame that had sparked at Christmas was now a steady fire, warming me as I built a life free from their control. A week later, I stood in the courtyard of Grandpa's rental property, my boots crunching on the gravel, a clipboard in my hand. The building was modest, red brick, 8 units, a little worn but sturdy. I'd spent days meeting tenants, listening to their concerns, leaky faucets, outdated wiring. My pen scratched notes as I nodded, my hair tucked behind my ears, the winter air sharp but invigorating. This place was mine. Not just legally but in purpose. I'd decided to reinvest the income into the property, starting a community fund for repairs and tenant program. My fingers tightened around the clipboard, a quiet pride swelling in my chest. Grandpa had trusted me to do right by this, and I would, on my terms. I met with a contractor that afternoon, pointing out cracks in the walls, my voice steady as I outlined plans. "This isn't just about fixing things," I told him, my eyes meeting his. "It's about building something lasting." He nodded, jotting down estimates, while I imagined a garden where tenants could gather, maybe a scholarship for their kids. This was my legacy, not my parents' or Emily's. My family's name had been tied to deceit, but I was rewriting it, brick by brick. As I walked the property, my hand brushing the rough exterior, I felt Grandpa's faith in me, steady as the ground beneath my feet. I wasn't erasing my past, I was reclaiming it, creating something good where they'd left only lies. The fire inside me burned bright, not with anger now, but with purpose. I sat on my apartment's balcony, a blanket draped over my shoulders, the city lights twinkling below as dusk settled. My hands cradled a mug of tea, steam curling in the cool air, and I let my thoughts wander. The property was mine, the tenants' first community meeting was planned, and my family's calls had stopped. I'd expected to feel triumph, but instead, there was a quiet stillness. My fingers traced the mug's rim, my eyes fixed on the horizon. I'd spent years chasing their approval, measuring my worth by their glances, their words. That portrait had been a final cut, but it hadn't broken me. It had freed me. I didn't need their validation, my worth was in the choices I made, the life I was building. I thought of Grandpa, his kind eyes, his belief in me. He'd seen what they hadn't. My shoulders relaxed, the weight of their rejection gone. I wasn't the outcast. I was the one who'd walked away, who'd chosen peace over pretense. The fire that sparked at Christmas was now a steady warmth. Not of anger but of self-assurance. I set the mug down, my hands steady, and smiled. This was enough. Me, my purpose, my chosen family. I was whole. So what do you think? Did I take back enough, or should I have pushed harder? Drop a comment below with your thoughts, and share your own story of breaking free. Subscribe for more stories like this, and let's keep building our own paths, one choice at a time.